Hello everybody, this is TUSDarryl and welcome to my review of DreadOut, a game that I played off my channel a long while ago. I wanted to play it again for the channel so I could do a proper, let's play then review thing for the channel, so I had some videos, but I didn't. I kind of didn't even think about that at the time. I had played DreadOut and finished it before I recorded Jet Set Radio, literally the first episode. I mentioned that I had been playing it or had finished it. I can't quite remember what I said, but either way, I was in the midst of playing it if I hadn't finished it at that point. So I want to bring it up to the light now. So, man, I'm tired. Okay. Anyway, let's hop right into the story of DreadOut. So because I can't quite remember everything about DreadOut, or at least enough to censor myself, so I'm not accidentally spoiling the game for anybody, I'm going to read the blurb that's on the Steam page. DreadOut is a third-person supernatural horror game where you play as Linda, a high school student. I know, she doesn't really look like she's in high school to me either. Anyway, trapped in an old abandoned town. Equipped with her trusty smartphone, she will battle against terrifying encounters and solve mysterious puzzles which will ultimately determine her fate. Now, personally, I found the story of DreadOut to be a little confusing, but looking back on it, I feel like there are a lot of points in the story that tied together that helped it make sense. It's just, if you're not very familiar with certain mythos and whatnot, it may throw you off. But at the same time, it's not that outlandish where you can't catch on. And either way, you're still going to have a lot of fun, in my opinion, with the story. Or at least as much fun as you can have in something as terrifying as this game. But I'll get to that in a minute. For now, let's hop into the graphics. So graphically, DreadOut is pretty weak. It has its moments where it shines, and that's thankfully due to really good lighting in some areas. The background, or I should say the environment in general, is weak in terms of presence most of the time because it's not the focus. Most of the focus that you will see graphically with DreadOut is with the main character, Linda, with the other characters, with the creatures, with the monsters, which in my opinion, if you're going to focus on a horror game and pour your budget in one place, I'm not saying they did pour it all in one place, but if I'm going to pour it in either the environment or the creatures, I'm happy they poured it into the creatures, because these creatures are the things that are going to be recurring throughout the game, and the only way you can beat them is with your phone. You have to look at them. So I'd rather look at something actually terrifying instead of a block flying at me, if you know what I'm trying to say. Overall, graphically, DreadOut is very wishy-washy. Sometimes really good, sometimes really bad. It's a mixed bag. Moving on to sound. Now, I don't have any clips to show you here or let you hear of the various sounds and whatnot you'd hear in DreadOut, but I will say this much. Voice acting aside, which is very stiff and robotic, the ambient noises and the ghostly moans and sometimes eerie music and tones and whatnot, they all blend together very well. And honestly, they kind of terrify me more than the actual creatures that you encounter. In fact, a lot of the time when a creature's about to show up, or if it's not going to show up at all, you'll jump just from the noise and the awareness that something is out there. And sometimes the game will play with you with certain jump scares where they're mainly based off sound, but they'll be accompanied by, obviously, an image. And sometimes that image won't be much of anything. Sometimes that image might just simply be, I don't know, a very crudely scribbled sheet of paper. But because you hear such a loud noise in close vicinity to you, almost like it's right there in your left ear, it terrifies you. The sound direction is great in DreadOut. Moving on to gameplay. So this is where things get a little tricky, but also get a little juicy. If you're familiar with the game franchise Fatal Frame, then you may be familiar with what I'm about to say here. Basically, the only way you can defeat the enemies in this game is by pointing your phone or camera at some point in the game at them and taking a picture of them. Sometimes you have to take a picture of them multiple times. Your phone, camera, and your camera in general can also be used to solve puzzles, various puzzles in the game. The phone is also used to see things that cannot be seen by the naked eye. It's a really cool gameplay mechanic that I honestly wish would be picked up a lot more often outside of DreadOut and Fatal Frame, even though it frankly terrifies me a lot. Um, on another note, if you're wondering if the game is jump scare heavy or anything like that, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. That really depends on what you define as a jump scare. Like me personally, I define a jump scare as something that blankets over the screen and terrifies you. You know, like that little maze game that some people play sometimes, and you're really focused on it, and then suddenly something blankets the screen, and the image screams at you. You get something like that in DreadOut every now and then, but normally no. Most of the scares are I want to call it organic, if that makes sense, but more like they don't blink at the screen. She sees them just like you see them. Now, she does suffer from those images too, but they don't really, not like the jump scares I just described. They don't really break the fourth wall and like blink at the screen. No, she sees them as it's coming at her. Enemy variety is also very interesting in this game. You would think that it would stick with a few certain enemies, like it's hard to pronounce some of the names I'm thinking of, and I don't have an image for every single kind of enemy, but just know that there is a very wide variety of enemy types in the game. Some a little jokey, I won't lie. There were some that I thought were kind of funny. There's one scene or one part of the game, where you walk into this nook that's like where they keep all the food, the pantry. You walk into the pantry, and there's this ghost chugging, I want to say chum because I'm not sure what else it could have been, but it's falling through her. Then I think she turns around. I can't remember what she does, but she does drop the pot, and you're thinking it's going to be a jump scare, like she's going to come at you. You ready your camera, and no, she fades away and belches. So the game has a sense of humor. It has a sense of humor. You'll have moments where you laugh, but after that moment where you laugh, you'll realize, oh God, I'm alone again. This game does a very good job of making you never want anybody. It doesn't matter what character is with you at the time. They could be the most irritating piece of crap you've ever met. You don't want them to leave. Like, you may say, like, oh God, you're so annoying, please go away. Fine, I will. And they start walking away. You're like, no, 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 please come back. I'm scared. No, please, no. I'll give you a cookie. I'll give you 2 cookies. 2.5. 2.5. That's the most I can afford right now with my budget. You'll be making deals with them, trying to keep them close. I'm not saying you really do that. I'm just saying that's what I would do in that scenario. I would offer people cookies so they don't leave me with the ghosts and whatnot. That I'd steal their phone charger, since phones are very important in DreadOut. Anyway, the atmosphere of the game is very tense. If I couldn't stress that enough. Like, I already mentioned that you have to focus on these things that will terrify you. They terrified me. Heck, I look back on some of these enemies, and whew, some things I just really don't want to see. Bugs, there aren't really any bugs that come to mind outside of the fact that the game's kind of old-ish. So I haven't had any crashes outside of the initial, you boot up the game, you change its resolution. Some games are just going to crash on you when you change the resolution. That's going to happen. But after that, it's no problem. The game runs fine, completely fine. Now, I do have one problem that I think that I'm trying to recall. I do have one problem, and that's with that's with one section of the game where you're being chased. And in this section, I feel like, in my personal opinion, it's completely unfair because Linda doesn't run very fast, and you can, I believe, get tired in the yes, you do. Yes, you do get tired in the game, but she would always get tired at the same part. So it's a lot of trial and error. You just keep running and running, but she always gets tired at the same spot. That's the thing. I don't quite remember how I was able to get away from the guy, but oh man, it's just constantly trying and trying only to just barely make it. And I feel like there might have been another way to do that part, but I couldn't see it. Maybe you did. If you did, let me know. Then maybe I can just facepalm and say, duh, why didn't I notice that too? Finally, the game does, if I'm going back to gameplay real quick, the game does have how I want, but it kind of has multiple endings, but it really only has two, no, three. I want to say three. Yeah, it has three. There's obviously the bad ending, then there's the ending, and then there's the true ending. The true ending is determined by what happens. I want to say that's like maybe the slightly latter portion of the halfway point of the game. So like you have your 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. I'd say by the time you're making this choice, you would be about maybe 68% through the game. That's what I want to say off the top of my head. But anyway, there's a point in time where you make this choice in the game, and it's so. Oh, first of all, that scene was so well done. I wish I could spoil it right now for you all, but you'll just have to play it and you'll know the scene I'm referring to. But there is a choice you can make, and you can mess up, and the game will not tell you that you messed up. It'll just keep going, but you're locked into either the bad ending or the normal ending at that point. You can't get the true ending at that point. Anyway, this video's gone on a lot longer than I thought it would. I don't know if I ran out of images or screenshots and whatnot yet that may or may not be spoilery. Normally you would just need a lot of context for these screenshots. This game is very vague with its deeper parts of its story, but either way is DreadOut, a go for it, caution or avoid. I'd say if you're a fan of horror games and Fatal Frame, go for it. If you're a fan of just plain being spooked or want a unique style of gameplay that you don't see very often in the mainstream, then I'd say go for it. But if you're sensitive to jump scares, don't go for it. Or should I say caution? I'd still say play it, because since the game doesn't rely heavily on that, it relies more heavily on its atmosphere. But there are a decent amount of jump scares in the game. Good jump scares, but jump scares nonetheless. So thank you guys for stopping by and checking out my review of DreadOut. I really wish I could have played it for the channel. Maybe I will if you guys want me to. I kind of hope you say don't play it for the channel, because I won't lie, it's one of those horror games where you don't go back into it thinking, oh yeah, I know where everything is, I know where it's going to scare me here, scare me there, so I can brace myself. I know those places, I know where it will want to do that. I still don't want to go through it. I look at this game like I look at the Stalker level in Dead Space 2. Every time I get to those parts, I'm like, I'm done. No, those stalkers, those things, they make me really tense. They are really tricky. Well, tricky at the time to fight, or at least for me, they were at the time. Anyway, this video's gone on long enough. I'll catch you guys later.